Welcome everybody, this is Tim Watrous, President of Digital Advisors.
And this is Kevin Gordon, President of Capital Advisors Group.
We'd like to welcome you to our K-12 Politics and Tech video series.
Our objective is to give you the absolute latest of what's going on in Sacramento that affects public school districts, obviously, and as well as all the technology stuff that's going on that's so vital to delivering for kids these days.
And remember, if you find these videos useful, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel and share out over social media. You're our marketing team. We appreciate your support, and let's go ahead and get started. All right, welcome everybody. Tim Watrous, President of Digital Advisors, back with another episode of K-12 Politics and Tech. As always, co-host of the show, Kevin Gordon, President of Capital Advisors, here as well. Kevin, glad to have you back.
Great to be here, Tim.
Hey, so as always, lots of wonderful news and some actually rosy news for education budgets starting in DC. Can you tell us what the president announced this week?
Yeah, I mean, it's good stuff, and the real issue is, can you get it passed? But President Biden did release his full budget plan. Actually, I shouldn't say full, because there are members of the budget committee back in Washington who are saying, where's the specifics? Because they're looking for language because they want to start digging into it. And those are his Democrat allies. But on the broad strokes are just incredible, which is again, a very, very big overall budget proposal by the president. The reason why that's significant to all of us in education is because we've been talking a lot about one-time money and stimulus. The budget proposal is what we talk about, ongoing money and big investments by the president in education. I'm going to start with what I think is, to me, a really exciting and important issue, but not the biggest in terms of dollar amount, and that's special ed. Is people will remember that during the campaign, which, by the way, I will say at least 2 or 3 prior presidential campaigns, candidates of both parties have committed to trying to get full funding for special ed. President Biden campaigned on it too. I didn't take it all that seriously because we'd heard it so many times before by both Republican and Democrat candidates when they were running, only for them to sort of face a budget reality once they got elected, and we just ended up not being a priority. But the president sort of putting his his money where his mouth is, and commits to the biggest increase in special ed funding we've had probably in close to 2 decades. A $2.6 billion increase to special ed. And again, we're tossing around a lot of billions these days, so probably almost sounds small compared to all the other billions of dollars that are being invested today. But a $2.6 billion increase to special ed is remarkable, and it goes toward the promise that he made to fully fund the federal commitment to special ed, which was made in 1975, that it would be 40% of our overall costs in special ed. And his intention is over a 10-year period to do this. There's been legislation now introduced in both the Senate and the House of Representatives that would mirror what the president's trying to do here. So that moves separate from the budget process, but it's all moving in the right direction. So that's on special ed. The second piece is on Title I. That's actually the bigger piece, the most dramatic piece. So the largest increase to Title I since the inception of the program in 1965, a $20 billion increase. And that's keeping with a promise that he made also during the campaign, that he wanted to see Title I funding nationally tripled, which would be huge. There are districts all over the state of California that would clearly benefit. And again, a lot of the one-time money that we've gotten has been, doled out using Title I as a formula, not necessarily the program. This would be permanent increases to Title I. So, in order to gird against what would potentially be a cliff effect, as long as the president keeps this up and he manages to get it passed, will be good. At some point in the near future, like many times we've had Governor Bob Weiss join us, I'm going to be real interested, Tim, when we get Bob back on, to give us the political handicapping of this, because this is going to be a tougher road for the president, because I don't think we can use what Bob described as that arcane sort of reconciliation process where they basically just have to get all their Democrat votes lined up with the vice president and they can do whatever they want. But I think this is going to be more subject to the traditional process, which is going to require, at least 60 vote support in the U.S. Senate, which is going to be a tough one for the president. Although I'm really optimistic because both parties have been really supportive of doing some things in education. Both parties, and as I mentioned before, even Republican presidents that have been in office have been in favor of special education investments. The biggest increase that we got prior to this was from George W. Bush in a pair of different years when he gave more than $1 billion increase in each of those years. We haven't seen increases since then of that magnitude. We've pretty much hold level funding for special education for the most part, not any really appreciable increases like those in the $1 billion range. So there were some other pieces in the president's budget that are notable. $1 billion that would be allocated nationally to try to, help support nurses, counselors, mental health issues. And again, $1 billion sounds like nothing, in the context of all the money that's been thrown around in the last year. But it is a really meaningful increase by the president in this budget. And it also highlights issues that states are grappling with. And certainly in California, we know each of those issues, whether it's, the counseling issues, the mental health issues, and the nursing issue. All of those things are big needs for education. And then 2.7 billion, which is a pretty healthy sum, going to early education and Head Start programs. So those are increases, augmentations to the budget that the president's proposing. So more good news there. I mean, when you take a look at it in the context, Tim, of what we've been talking about over the last few weeks, we had that big infrastructure package the president has where, he'd be infusing as much as $100 billion for school facilities. The $100 billion that you talked about with regard to, internet connectivity. And I think he's actually done some interviews recently about the urgency of connectivity nationally in every home, every building, just like we do, treating it like telephones in terms of it being an absolutely essential utility. You just check the boxes. I mean, it couldn't be a better year in terms of the progress that we may be making as we look toward the next few years of what's going to happen in education in terms of investment across a number of different issues. And that's not even talking about what's going on at the state level. So all federal stuff.
Well, thanks, Kevin. It's encouraging to hear, about the ongoing funding being proposed for special education. It's certainly been one of the trickiest things to solve in this distance learning, hybrid learning, which we know isn't going away. So additional funding coming in that regard is wonderful. I'll just say, you mentioned connectivity. That was actually where we were headed next. So it's good segue for us. But I had the pleasure to speak to John Harrington as the CEO of Funds for Learning. They're the largest E-rate consultant in the United States, and they are really connected with what's going on in DC. I reached out to John because we get a lot of questions, a lot of inquiries about that $7 billion that was set aside in the last stimulus to connect folks at home through E-rate. Like, when are we going to hear about this? What does this mean? When are the details coming out? He let me know that the FCC is legally obligated to provide those details by May 10th. So we will know by May 10th how that $7 billion is going to be spent, the red tape and things that may be associated with it, the timeframes and so on. And actually, John will be kind enough to join us that week to give us a breakdown of, just a general breakdown of or preview of what he thinks is coming. So we'll look forward to seeing John, and we'll let you know that when John's on. The folks that watch every week, of course, you'll catch it when you see. I also want to call out that the FCC, remember, they had earmarked dollars in the second stimulus to go out and do surveys, to go out and see where the connectivity is good and where it's bad, so they would know where they need to build. And they're actually asking for our help. So if you're eager to assist, the FCC has built a tool. It's a broadband testing tool. Any of your parents, your students, your community members, yourselves, you can run this testing tool. And every time you do, it provides them valuable data on connectivity in your area. If this something you struggle with, you're going to be extra motivated. And if it's something that you're great on, it would still be helpful. So we'll put the link to that article and actually the testing application, which you can download on your phones. You can use it on your computers. But please encourage all of your stakeholders to use that tool. The more data they have, the better job they're going to do of serving you. So some great announcements this week. And Kevin, did you have something to add there?
What I was going to say is that it seems like it would be good for us to encourage folks that are in more rural areas, small school districts, to make sure you try that tool, because I think amongst the data that they're going to get is they're going to actually be able to measure the kind of speeds that you're getting. And so if there's all those diagnostics they'll be able to pull, they're going to be, it's almost like you're making the argument for your own well-being. When they get that data, it's going to get passed along to policymakers so that we can do something with it. So that sounds great.
Great call, and it'll be time well spent. So, please, you've taken the time to do some advocacy as we, urge you to do on the show before. Please take the time to use this tool. If they sent out an army of testers, they would never get the kind of data that they can gather from you. So please take a moment to do so. And again, that link will be in the email that goes out and also underneath the YouTube video. So go ahead and spread that out to your community. So Kevin, we heard some news at the state Senate this week in advance of the May revision. Can you tell us what we're hearing from Sacramento on the May revise?
Very, very interesting step by the California State Senate leadership this week to put out basically a budget blueprint of what their major priority is going to be in advance of the May revision. I don't remember ever seeing that before. I could be wrong, but I think that's kind of unprecedented. The Senate did do that last year after the May revise came out. Many of you will remember the governor last May had proposed the deepest cuts to public education ever. The Senate came out with a blueprint of principles right after that, basically saying we're not for any cuts in education. We don't think that you cut public schools during a global pandemic. And the Senate's leadership started the ball rolling for us to actually avoid any cuts, which obviously we didn't end up needing. And we went the route of deferrals instead, which was a better way to go in anticipation that if things got better, we could roll those back. And all of that's playing out now. So excellent leadership by our state Senate on that. Well, this time they get ahead of the May revision, which is interesting. And it's almost like trying to effectuate or impact the governor's own May revision a little bit by seeing the turf that the Senate stakes out. One of the issues, for example, is one that many of you have heard me barking about over the last few months. It's a big issue to me, and it was getting glossed over a little bit, but it has to do with the deferrals. Is that we know that there were $12.5 billion worth of deferrals that are implemented, and that in the governor's January budget, he said, look at, because the economy is doing much better than anybody would have thought, let's get rid of most of those deferrals. We're going to pay all of those down. But he left a balance of $3.7 billion with no plan of how we were going to address those. It's sort of like, we'll deal with it another day. And I just thought right now, while we have the resources, we ought to be paying down that deferral. Now, the revenue numbers have continued to come in really well. It definitely gives them the ability to do it. The Senate gets out there in front of the governor on this and says, we need to address all the deferrals. And so that's one of the pieces of their plan. They also talk about another really refreshing issue in their plan is to deal with, in a very meaningful way, school nutrition. A very significant increase in the state support for school meal programs. And you guys might remember that, almost a decade ago, the legislature was messing around with higher standards in terms of the quality of the food, the nutritional content of the food, but they weren't really adding anything meaningful to the amount of money they were helping us pay for these meals, right? And we all know, it's kind of sad, but sometimes those higher nutrition standards and low sodium and all the things you want for a healthy meal, manufacturers actually charge you more for healthy food. And so they were mandating new restraints on what we could serve, but they weren't giving us any more money. And the total dollar amount was about, 25 cents per lunch for school. I mean, that's hardly a commitment to kids if you're only providing that much of the funding to match with the federal resources that we're getting. So roll forward to what's happened in this pandemic, and it's just a great outcome. One of the few great outcomes of this pandemic has been the focus on school nutrition and the actual need to make sure that all kids get fed. They really are headed toward a universal feeding program for kids in child nutrition. So we're not trying to figure out what kid accidentally got fed a meal they weren't eligible for. All kids ought to be fed. So we think that's what this Senate proposal is going to have in it, if not a very bold increase in funding, a really bold step toward universal serving of meals. And that's just a great change in policy for the state that we're looking forward to. I know that the author of legislation, Nancy Skinner, who happens to chair the budget committee in the Senate, will probably be, you know, a major player in the overall budget as it comes forward, is in favor of a universal approach to child nutrition. So all good news there. Then they also mentioned special education as a high priority for additional funding. That clearly matches actually with the governor. In fact, the governor is supportive on a lot of these things. They are just going to sort of do one more, if you will. And we love it when there's competition in the Capitol with who loves us the most, right? And so we've got a lot of these different components going on. And one of the most important things that was in that document was the Senate's concern about the longer term fiscal stability of school districts. And they mention terminology like that. That's music to our ears. That means they're hearing us. They're hearing the advocacy from all of you. They're hearing the messaging that we're getting out. So really encouraging news out of the state Senate this week. Somebody asked me yesterday, so did it pass? Where is this? I said, no, these are just proposals. This is part of a long budget process that culminates in the final budget act in June that'll be implemented for July 1st. But it's just really encouraging news as one step along the way of what I think will be a very promising budget.
Well, thanks, Kevin. And as always, if keep your eye out for the May Revise workshops the Capital Advisors team puts on through the County Offices of Education. Make sure you've got your leadership teams, your board members all attending. And those are wonderful workshops that the Capital Advisors team puts on. And of course, we'll be linking those when those invites are available. So thank you for sharing that. And I am actually very excited to announce this next piece. And we've been working on it for a little while. But University of Southern California, USC Rozier, Digital Advisors has partnered with USC Rozier to offer an innovative district leadership academy. And the goal of this is a one-year certificate. You're going to work as teams to solve a real problem in your district. You're going to basically learn how to work together to adjust to the rapidly changing environment that you're all in, and also build out a professional network with like-minded, innovative problem solvers. So, you're going to solve a problem. You'll see other people solve problems and get ideas on how to tackle some of the biggest challenges you face in education today. That'll be the industry experts that we have at Digital Advisors and the wonderful faculty at USC Rozier pairing up to offer this. This will start live in September. And the folks that watch this show are some of the very first people to learn about this. So just a little bit of a preview. We're going to do a wide public announcement in the very beginning of May, and we're going to start registration in the first or second week of May. So prime your teams, let them know this is coming. Please show up as a district leadership team if you have that ability. This is going to be all online, so you don't need to travel for it. Again, it's going to start September 30th and wrap up in the summer, and you're going to solve a real challenge in your district with a lot of great help from USC and the Digital Advisors team to do that. And of course, the Capital Advisors team has helped us in these sorts of initiatives in the past, and they'll be there supporting this effort as well. So
Right.
Very excited.
Go ahead, Tim. So I wanted to underscore this because I'm so excited about this. This basically is a continuum of an idea that Tim had a number of years ago, where the idea was to do cohorts. And you guys might remember, those of you that watch this, because I know many of you are the same folks who've been interested in this intersection between education policy, politics, and technology. And the idea was that we needed to make sure that we were growing and developing capacity with the superintendent at the cabinet level on technology. Is that we wanted to try to have a basically an evolution that means that our technology staff aren't people that are sort of really low in the org chart, and their main job is to make sure the superintendent's computer works well, but that you become a really important part of the fabric of the decision making for the entire district, and that every single seat at the cabinet table has a role from a technological standpoint in innovation for the district. So what we were trying to do is grow chief innovation officers, capacity with superintendents, and capacity with cabinet members who aren't necessarily technology experts to say, how do we integrate you into the technological innovation that's happening now in education? And clearly, the COVID crisis has just accelerated the role of technology in everything that we do. So we had done what, 3 cohorts, Tim?
Yeah, actually 4 cohorts were completed.
So 4 years of many of you who went through that with superintendents and key members of your governance team, would go through that program. And then basically for a lack of funding, we decided let's stop this for now because we were trying not to have you guys all shoulder it in the tuition cost, but in fact have other funding. Some of that funding dropped away and we couldn't bear to have that all shouldered by the individuals. So here USC steps up with Tim to collaborate to put this back together again. I think it's going to be more powerful and just more exciting than ever with that kind of horsepower with that USC brings to the equation. But so you can expect we're going to be getting emails out to you again because typically you guys offer us like 4 to 10 seats or 10 slots. And if we can get governance teams to do it, then you guys will usually let us sponsor some of this. So we're going to be, Capital Advisors is going to be very interested in getting involved with trying to do recruitment for that cohort. And you'll cap out at what, 30 again or 40?
Yeah, so because we're doing it digitally, we can have a little bit larger cohort, but we're going to cap it at 50 this
Okay,
initial
got it.
cohort. So we expect that it's going to fill up fast. Folks can register from anywhere. Before it was really just within the state of California,
Right.
and that because it's digital, so it can go anywhere.
Right.
I think you made a great point, Kevin. It's not just for non-technical people. This is certainly something the CTO, your tech director can join us, any leader, but cabinet level leaders is certainly going to be the most effective folks to have on, or someone who aspires to be on cabinet. And we've seen many districts really kind of come together in a new way to tackle problems together by going through this course as a team. And we've seen districts like, Jerry Almendarez, Colton sent, 2 or 3 years worth of folks, and many respected leaders have attended these types of, this previous course that you mentioned. And I do believe that with USC's brain power, and their expertise in this field, combined with that experience that we had in the past, it's going to be even better and I would say more powerful than it was. So, thank you so much for calling that out.
Yeah, really exciting.
Yeah. I mean, we'll certainly be sharing more. We will have a registration link, a website link, and so on. But we'll have a nice little flyer, attached in the email that goes out this week, and we'll have more as we develop that. So
Right.
thanks, Kevin. Yeah, and I'll just say, there's more push at Sacramento, Kevin, on summer school, which is needed, and of course that's creeping right up on us. So
Yeah.
can you tell us a little about that announcement this week?
Yeah, so the governor did a press conference yesterday. We didn't really have a heads up on it, but to announce, basically not to announce, but to just put a major heavy push on school districts doing summer school this year. And that's the way it was reported by Politico. And I've since sort of looked into it a little bit more. And I think the administration really just wants to push on the idea of again, the theme of all the money that was pushed out, which is extended learning, right? So it's not just summer school, but it'll be longer day, longer year, tutoring, all kinds of interventions, anything we can do to try to help compensate and accelerate learning. That's what the goal is. And but summer school became the story. I've commented to people that we've really kind of stepped up school districts all across the state to get open before the end of the year with in-person instruction. And that took a lot of effort, especially when it didn't look like that path was open until all of a sudden. Then it was like, hurry up and get that going. The notion of trying to pull together a summer program, in addition to making sure that when we come back in the fall, we've got something very coherent and very well thought out about how do you continue education in a positive way, but also go back and catch up, if you will. There's a lot on the plates of school districts. So the governor sort of made this pretty aggressive push for summer school, but the bottom line is there's no mandate. But again, he's using the bully pulpit to really try to get out there to push for that. And I know school districts are going to be doing that in many, many districts, but there are going to be some districts that are going to say, you know what, let's get to the fundamentals. Let's make sure that we're planning now in a really thoughtful way for our reopening in the fall. Because the problem is when you do things fast, you can really frustrate parents and the community and maybe not have the richness that you want in the content. So it's got to be very well thought out. There will undoubtedly be really good models of some ideas for summer school and also for when you're coming back for extended learning and intervention strategies. So that was a little bit of news that happened yesterday.
Thanks, Kevin. And I feel for our education leader friends out there. It's like return to school, end school, summer school, and then return to school. So there's a lot on your plates, and we feel for you, but it's nice to know that there's some additional support, or hopefully some support coming in that regard. So, one final note, I just want to mention, we are offering a learning recovery webinar. This is going to be the top tech considerations for rebuilding your data infrastructure to reflect what you need to address hybrid learning, distance learning, on-site, and the blend in between. What are those data points you need to gather these days to be able to show progress towards your goals, to address that 20% that's been carved out of the last two stimulus packages, and also just the tech tools and things that you might want to consider, or top tech tricks, if you will, tips, if you will, to help you accomplish those goals. So Blake Heller, who was on last week, he's a data scientist from Harvard. He's going to be on. Constantino Aguiar, he's assistant superintendent of Merced Union High School District, wonderful leader. I have tons of respect for him. He'll be joining us. Kevin will be there as well to help us, fill in from some of the capital advisors team. And again, this is really going to be focusing on the data infrastructure, the tech tips. So please spread this out April 29th at 11 a.m. and we'll look forward to having you join us then. Yeah. Kevin, any final thoughts before we wrap up?
The key is that it's the merger of the issue you have to deal with, because you're getting a lot of money to deal with it, which is extended learning. But looking at it from the data standpoint is the data. Remember that in the legislation, it's a really important part of the legislation. It's evidence-based approaches to whether you're doing summer or you're doing extended learning. What does that mean? What do you need to be looking for? You're going to be looking for what data can tell you about practices that have been done, and then replicating some of those ideas. So it's really built around, again, extended learning, those kinds of issues, the imperative on learning loss and everything. But as it relates to data, I think you're going to enjoy that workshop. And then finally, I wanted to mention a couple things we're doing. So Jack O'Connell is rolling out a little series, and you'll get some reminders of this too. We'll have links on there, probably not on today's broadcast, but next week's. And you might remember that when he was state superintendent, he did a major initiative called Brokers of Expertise. What it really is some best practices that are going on, people that have ideas, and you might not necessarily agree with all of them. I mean, there are different approaches to deal with learning loss, extended learning intervention, but there are different approaches that different superintendents and districts are taking to grapple with this. They've already made decisions about this, and we just wanted to share it with you. So Jack is going to sort of MC a program where they look at 5 or 6 different models. There's so many that people are coming to us with. We'll probably do 2 or 3 installments of that. But we think you're going to like that Brokers of Expertise thing that we're going to do, and we'll get that linked probably next week. And then Tim had mentioned earlier that we are looking at at doing the budget workshops again in May, and you're going to get plenty of information on that as well. Great.
Well, Kevin, thank you very much for that, and we'll look forward to watching Jack. And one of the best things we can do, as there's 1,000 school districts in the state of California, is share what's working and expertise. And certainly Jack, with his skill set and career, he's a great person to lead that conversation. So we'll look forward to that. And again, everyone, we want to thank you for tuning in and sharing this broadcast with others. We reached over 500 subscribers now. We're on our way to 1,000. So if you can help us spread the word, we would really love that. And this is the Capital Advisors team, Digital Advisors team, trying to provide you some valuable resources in a tricky time. So thank you for all the wonderful comments and questions that come in. Please continue helping spread the word about the show. And Kevin, I want to say thanks again for being on this week, and we'll look forward to catching up with you next week.
Great, Tim. We'll be there.
All right, thank you.
So thanks again for joining us for another week of this broadcast.
And I just want to take a moment to remind you, if you haven't already, please subscribe to our channel and share this out over social media. Again, you're our marketing team. I'll also finish by saying, if you have some questions, please send them our way. We'd be happy to address them on a future broadcast. So with that, thanks everybody, and we'll talk soon.